Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. There are certain questions we never ask when we're 20. At 20, we're usually asking how to make more money. At 30, we're asking how to become successful. We want to build something, a career, a business, a family, a future, and we should. But somewhere around the age of 40, the questions begin to change. We begin asking ourselves things we never thought to ask before. Have I spent my years wisely? What truly matters now? What should I still be building? And perhaps the most important question of all, what becomes more valuable as I grow older? Because life has a curious way of teaching us that many of the things we spent years chasing are not nearly as valuable as we once believed. Money has its place. Success has its place. Achievement has its place. But I have known men who possessed all three and were still poor in the ways that matter most. And I have known others who had very little by comparison and yet possessed something so valuable that it enriched every part of their lives. The remarkable thing about this particular asset is that time works in its favor. At 25, it is useful. At 40, it becomes invaluable. At 60, it often explains why one person's life continues to expand while another's begins to grow smaller. No economy can take it from you. No recession can diminish it. No employer can give it to you. It must be deliberately built, one day at a time. And unlike many things in life, it becomes more valuable with every passing year. I believe it is the most valuable asset a person can build after 40. If you're somewhere between 40 and 60, I'd wager you've done a great deal of work in your life, real work, the kind that required you to show up whether you felt like it or not. You've had good years and some genuinely hard ones. You've built things, a business perhaps, or a family, or a standing in your community that took years to earn. And along the way, you've lost things too, people sometimes, certainties you once held. A few beliefs about how life was supposed to unfold that didn't quite survive contact with the real thing. You're probably carrying more responsibility than you talk about, for the people who depend on you, for the commitments you made when the commitments seemed more manageable. And you carry it without making too much of it, because that's simply what the situation requires, and you're the kind of person who does what the situation requires. But I'd be willing to guess that in the quiet hours, late in the evening, when the house settles and the demands of the day have released their grip, you find yourself thinking about things that the morning rush doesn't leave time for. Whether the years have been well spent, whether the work you're doing is the work you should be doing, whether there are things you've been meaning to give your full attention to for a long time that keep getting pushed to the back of the line. And underneath all of it, a question that is harder to name but present nonetheless. Is what I'm building right now going to mean something to me in 15 years? If that sounds familiar, I'm not surprised. These are the questions that the middle of a serious life tends to produce, not because something has gone wrong, because something has gone right. You've accumulated enough experience to ask better questions than you could at 30. And you have enough of your life still ahead of you to do something real with the answers. That is not a small position to be in. Let me tell you about a man I knew, a building contractor in a mid-sized city, hard-working, honest, well-regarded in his trade. He'd spent 25 years growing a solid business. His company was sound, his family was provided for, and his name carried weight in his community. When I saw him at 51, he told me something I've thought about since. He said he felt he'd spent 25 years learning to build houses and had never quite found the time to build himself. The business had grown considerably. The man himself had changed very little from the fellow he'd been at 26. He wasn't bitter about it. He wasn't in any kind of crisis. He was simply being honest about something most men rarely examine directly. That the outer life had received far more deliberate investment than the inner one. I think he was more common than he knew. What the asset actually is. So what is this asset I've been speaking about? It is wisdom. Not wisdom in the general sense of having lived a long time or accumulated a good deal of experience. Living a long time doesn't automatically produce wisdom. I've known men of 60 who had been making the same category of mistake for 30 years and calling it experience. Simply repeating a year doesn't teach you what the year had to offer. What I mean is something more specific. The genuine, hard-won understanding of what is actually true. About people, about how decisions play out over time, about what kinds of effort produce what kinds of results, and about what genuinely matters when you add it all up at the end. The first component of this is the ability to read a situation accurately. A wise man walks into a difficult situation, a negotiation, a family conflict, a business problem, and sees it more clearly than someone without his years would. Not because he's more intelligent in any academic sense, but because he has seen variations of that situation before. He's been wrong about similar situations in the past, figured out why, and adjusted. He's learned to tell the difference between what a thing appears to be and what it actually is. The businessman who can read whether a potential partner is genuinely committed or merely performing commitment is in an entirely different position than the one who can't. The father who can see what his son is actually struggling with beneath the surface behavior has something that no formal education provides. You build this capacity by paying close attention over years, by caring enough about the truth of a situation to look past your first impression of it. The second component is sound judgment. Intelligence is the ability to process information and reason through it logically. Judgment is the capacity to weigh considerations that are sometimes in conflict with one another and arrive at a wise course of action when the information available is incomplete, which it almost always is. Benjamin Franklin had this in abundance. He was not the most formally educated man in Philadelphia, but he was one of the most sought-after advisors in the colonies because people trusted his ability to look at a complicated situation clearly, weigh what actually mattered, and offer a view that proved sound over time. That trust was earned through years of having his judgments tested against outcomes. He paid attention to the results. He adjusted when he was wrong. He developed through that long process of honest observation a calibrated sense of what was likely to work and what was not. Judgment of that quality is worth more in the practical conduct of a life than energy, credentials, or persuasive ability. It cannot be hurried into existence. It is built slowly, through experience, honestly examined. Why most people have the experience but not the wisdom? Experience and wisdom are not the same thing. Experience is the raw material. Wisdom is what you make of it, and most people make considerably less of it than the material would allow. The conversion requires something that is genuinely uncomfortable, honest self-examination. Not the comfortable kind, where you review a past decision and conclude that you made the best choice available given what you knew. That exercise feels thorough and is nearly useless. Honest self-examination means looking at what actually happened as a result of the decision, not what justified it, and asking what a wiser choice would have looked like. Most people avoid this, not because they lack the capacity for it, but because it requires allowing the evidence to contradict the story they prefer about themselves. And most of us are considerably more attached to our existing picture of ourselves than we realize. The second requirement is the willingness to change the conclusion when the evidence warrants it. A man can observe clearly, examine honestly, and still fail to update his beliefs because updating them requires admitting, even just to himself, that he was wrong about something he held with confidence. The older the belief and the more publicly it has been held, the harder this is. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher of the 1st century who spent much of his life as a slave before becoming one of the most influential teachers of his age, observed something that has stayed with me. He wrote, "It is not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters." He was not speaking of temperament. He was describing a practice, the deliberate, repeated choice to examine your response to experience rather than simply having it. The man who does this builds something. The man who simply reacts year after year without examining his reactions is not building anything. He is repeating himself. The kind of wisdom that improves everything around it. Most adults are considerably less curious about other people than they were as children. At some point in the process of becoming responsible and busy, the curiosity narrowed. The man who keeps it alive, who remains genuinely interested in what other people are actually experiencing, develops over decades an understanding of human nature that is among the most practically useful things he can possess. A simple illustration. Two men are in the same business negotiation. One is focused on the terms, advancing his position, protecting against the others. His attention is on the transaction. The second man is doing something quietly different. He is asking himself what the person across the table from him actually needs. What pressures is he working under? What does a successful outcome genuinely look like for him, beyond the numbers being discussed? If the second man reads the situation reasonably accurately, he can find terms that work for both parties rather than simply pushing for the best terms for himself. He can address concerns that are not being stated directly. He builds a relationship rather than completing a transaction. Repeat that difference across 20 years of business dealings, and the gap between those two men's positions is very large indeed. The ability to understand what other people actually need is not a polite social grace. It is one of the most powerful practical capacities available to a human being. How to build it from here. The first practice is simple to state and genuinely difficult to sustain. Most men of 40 or 50 have not had a significant amount of genuine solitude in years. The management of adult life is remarkably effective at filling every available hour. The thinking that gets done is almost entirely reactive, addressed to whatever the immediate situation requires. Wisdom does not build in reactive mode. It builds in the examination of what experience has produced and what that implies. An hour a week honestly given to that examination compounds over years into something real. William James, who spent his life studying how the human mind actually functions rather than how we imagine it does, wrote that the capacity for sustained voluntary attention is the foundation of all genuine intellectual achievement, and that it can be developed through practice like any other faculty. He called it the most important educational aim a person could pursue. The faculty of voluntarily bringing back a wandering attention over and over again is the very root of judgment, character, and will. An education which should improve this faculty would be the education par excellence. He was right, and the practice is available to anyone willing to take it seriously, not as a discipline imposed from outside, but as a genuine investment in the one resource that determines the quality of every other decision. The second practice is honest conversation with people whose judgment you actually respect. This is different from talking through problems with people who are likely to agree with you. Agreement is pleasant and rarely useful in this particular context. What is useful is the perspective of someone who has earned through their own track record the right to an honest opinion, and who cares enough about you to offer it directly. These conversations are uncomfortable in proportion to their honesty. They are also among the most reliable sources of the kind of external calibration that genuine wisdom requires. Other people see things about us that we cannot see ourselves. The man who regularly invites that perspective and who has developed enough steadiness to receive it without defensiveness learns things that self-reflection alone never provides. The third practice is the one most people skip, and it may be the most important. Apply what you already know. Most people know considerably more than they act on. They know their health requires consistent attention, and they are not giving it consistent attention. They know their most important relationships require real time, and those relationships are receiving less of it than they deserve. They know that the work they find most meaningful has been crowded out by work that is merely urgent, and they have not reorganized their days to change that. The gap between what a person knows and what they do is not primarily a gap in understanding. It is a gap in commitment. Closing it, bringing the daily behavior into genuine alignment with the understanding already in hand, is what actually converts experience into wisdom, rather than merely into the appearance of it. So, the most valuable asset a person can build after 40 is not something that can be purchased, borrowed, or conferred by any institution. It is the slowly accumulated, honestly examined understanding of what is actually true about the field you work in, about the people around you, about yourself, about what kinds of decisions produce what kinds of lives. That understanding compounds. Every year it is built upon, it becomes more useful than it was the year before. And unlike most things a man can own, it cannot be taken from him by any change in external circumstance. The man who arrives at 60 with 30 years of carefully examined experience is a fundamentally different instrument than the man who simply lived for 30 years without examining much of what those years produced. One has been building something, the other has been passing time, and the choice between them is still available, not by overturning everything and not by making grand declarations about what the next chapter will look like. Simply by beginning the practices, the honest examination, the genuine conversation, the application of what you already know, that turn the years ahead into something more than the years behind. The investment begins this morning. Think about that.